What we're here today to talk about is to get the people back in this building. It's been a year, folks. It's been a year. Our system of government is not wired for one-person rule. One person has been ruling Connecticut through executive order. Came to us initially, nobody knew what we were confronting. Understandably, it was imposed. But then in September and again in January, the governor asked for these executive orders. And in January, asked for orders to go through May. The legislative majority said no. April 20th is all he needs. This governor has been guided by science, data, and metrics. And last Friday began to open up Connecticut because it was time, guided by that science. It's time that we let the science govern the opening of this building. There's no reason why we can't open this building like we're opening Connecticut to the same level and extent, making sure we keep masks, social distancing, and the proper protocols in place to make sure that not only the people who work here, but anybody who decides to come here maintains a safe place and environment to be. This is the people's government. They have a right to be part of this process. But this process has been nothing but exclusionary. A virtual legislative session excluded 25% of Connecticut who had no connectivity to the internet. We see legislators getting cut off by the committee chairpersons. They are elected voices, voices of the people of Connecticut, be they Republican, Democrat, independent, or unaffiliated. All those voices have a right to be at the table. We see public hearings where as many as 80% of the people who have signed up to participate have been excluded, have been suppressed from the process. It's time we bring Connecticut's people to the table. We have three separate but equal branches of government. You have the judiciary, you have the governor, they're operating. The ones who aren't is the people's voice, the legislature. We need to get back into business. When the majority wants to act, like we're going to do later today with House Bill 6555 to take control of federal money coming to Washington through the COVID pandemic, they have the will to get involved and to take control. When they want to act quickly, like they did in giving a $300 million tax credit to individuals on average earning over $400,000, they were able to insert and do that. Why can't they do that for people of Connecticut to get their voice back in the building and to codify many of these executive orders by April 20th? They've known this day was going to come since January when the executive orders were extended. They asked for that date. That is when the homework assignment is due. But yet they're like the student who comes to class and says, hey, I don't have my homework today. Teacher, can you give me an extension? I think it's time that the legislature rightfully and constitutionally gets its voice back. And that's why we brought you here today, to let you know where we stand, that we believe in this city, the cradle of constitutional government, that it's time to bring the people's voice back. Questions?
So what do you anticipate for a public hearing that would operate under what you just suggested?
Well, I mean, once again, we should have been doing this all along. We would have to come up with a process in order to do that. But I think it's a process that's necessary. but a process that needs to start with a conversation and a dialogue. It's clear that the governor and the legislative majority had that conversation last week. Here we are Tuesday of this week. I was promised a meeting with the governor and I haven't heard anything yet.
If you had 1,000 people showing up because of the
Oh.
vaccine bill, what would you do? Would you be keeping people outside? Would you be allowing them in groups? I mean, if you're calling on this today, I assume you thought about it.
Yes, you would follow the same protocols that we would do with any type of hearing. So, for instance, right now there's requirements for masking, there's requirements for social distancing. I think outside you have up to 200. So you're only going to allow so many people to congregate based on what we're following in the protocols that we have. We want to make sure that we continue to have safe place and environments for everybody to participate.
That would be in lieu of doing things by Zoom, or would it be hybrid?
I think you would look at a hybrid.
I just want to make sure he was done. I can't tell with masks on. Senator, one of the executive orders that will expire on April 20th if the legislature doesn't do anything and if the governor's power isn't extended is one that allows pharmacists to administer the COVID-19 vaccine. So are there executive orders that you would like to see extended? Are you just saying that you want the legislature to do it versus the governor?
Well, this is something that should have been done all along. Okay. Now, here we are 30 days away. There are things, like you say, telehealth I think is universally accepted. You have the vaccines, the implementation of the vaccine. These are scope of practice issues. You know, like you have the mandate or the requirement that insurance companies cover the vaccines. There's caps and the copays and deductibles. This is a scope of practice issue. These are issues that have been historically in the 10 years I've been in insurance that we've dealt with routinely on a session by session basis. There's no reason why we couldn't codify that practice in a state law before April 20th. It can be done. I'm asking the majority, why aren't we doing it? Why haven't we done it, and why aren't we doing it? And why does there always have to be an extension of the governor's authority? Why don't we look at what's good, codify it? What needs modification, modify. What isn't applicable, we can leave behind. But let's start that process so that by April 20th, we're ready to move forward as a state.
Have they given you a good answer as to why they're looking at extending the executive powers again?
We haven't been in the room. No.
Why? Well, why do you think you haven't been in the room?
Ask them.
Well, I've got you in front of me, and you're clearly, I don't think, pleased with the fact that you have not yet met with the governor, either individually as Republican leaders or a bipartisan leadership, or even have a meeting scheduled with you guys before they meet with the Democrats, since after all, they are Democrats, so there's nothing really wrong with a Democratic governor and Democratic leaders meeting, right?
Correct. But when they're talking about having a process to look at this, and this isn't just, I think this transcends Republicans and Democrats. This is really about reestablishing constitutional and small d, democratic government back into Connecticut. And that's a conversation that all leaders should be involved in, and there should be a desire to get back to that sooner rather than later.
And what do you think this is, how does this bode going forward in terms of bipartisan cooperation? I mean, clearly you and your House counterpart have been, as you pointed out, saying we should be talking about this since January, and even before that. And here we are, coming up against an April 20th deadline, and, a couple weeks ago we had the governor saying that he wanted you guys to vote on mask mandates. So, how does this bode going forward?
I think we'll take it one issue at a time. I mean, I would like to have the conversation But I think we need to get the people into the building. When I say the people, I'm talking about their voice. Their voice needs to be there.
Well, I guess I'm asking, do they want to have a conversation with you, and from your perspective? They haven't yet.
They haven't yet.
Out of the 91 executive orders, does your caucus have a list that says these 40 should be extended, these 40 should be allowed to expire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I'm trying to figure out where we go from here.
Well, I think what we need to do to begin is to have that conversation, but to have a conversation that's focused on a deadline of April 20th. I think that's what we need to do.
But in other words, you may be, at whatever time frame, you're going to be voting on the extension, right? I guess what I'm asking you is, are you going to offer an amendment that says, let's not extend this beyond April 20th, right? Cut-off date April 20th, and therefore, these 40 that are listed here in the amendment, let's just codify those into law and go from there. Are you
Well,
gonna do that?
I don't, I understand there's session on Thursday to look at some bill that has not yet surfaced as to extending the governor's orders. That's all we know. We haven't had a conversation. We don't have language before us. We don't have a Senate session scheduled. So I think it's premature at this point to get into what we would or wouldn't do.
Senator, can you discuss or clarify, we don't know what this bill looks like, but there are two things at play, executive orders and extending them, but also extending an emergency declaration. How are you on the emergency declaration?
We'll look at them together at the same time and look at what that issue we'll look at both the executive orders and the emergency declaration when they come before us.
They say that will affect FEMA money, is that your belief?
It's uncertain. It's not my understanding of it. I've written a letter to the governor asking for clarification on that point and whether or not the Biden administration's national emergency would be sufficient to cover that.
What is your response to those who say Lamont has gotten Connecticut to a better point than other states are currently at right now with some of these executive orders?
I think the experience in the nursing homes, the residents and families would have a different perspective, and I think the Mathematica report bears that out.
On Thursday, I'm a little confused. It sounded like you were talking about a legislative session, and then maybe it sounds like maybe talk. What's happening Thursday?
As I understand it, there's a call for session for the House.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what's on that agenda, but you hear rumors in this place, and so I think it's going to be executive orders and their extension.
If I can ask again another way, can you give us a couple of examples of executive orders that you would like to see expire on April 21st?
Expire. Off the top of my head, I don't know at this time.
Well, should bars be reopened?
Restaurant, once again, what we want to make sure is that as we move forward with safety protocols, okay? We're not saying that COVID doesn't exist. We want to continue to be following science and data and make sure that people remain safe, okay? But I think in this process, and what the Superior Court Judge Mookwasher said, is that our Constitution is a call to action, and that the people need to be part of that action. So the executive orders in and of themselves need to be codified. We need to go through that process. And that's what we're asking to be part of that process. And that process needs to start now so that we can finish it by April 20th.
Okay, but do you anticipate getting down to that kind of granular detail about having the General Assembly of Connecticut decree when bars in Connecticut can reopen?
I think that's an open question.
Senator, would either of you like to comment on the planning and development back and forth over the discriminatory language that State Rep. Whitmer mentioned yesterday against Asian American
I'd prefer at this time not to. I'd rather have some conversations with leaders and the members involved. Okay, thank you very much.